right, Ben, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Great to have you here. I know you're already a leader who cares, but we're going to have to prove it to everybody else. Not everybody else, but some couple of people out there. But yeah, it's a thrill for me to have you on, especially since we've all been getting to know each other better and engaging together and doing some good stuff together that we're excited about. So I'm really honored to be able to bring you and as a result, Laureus onto this. But let's start, as always, with if you could introduce yourself briefly. And I always have to put an asterisk on this one for men because men usually start with their title and what they do for work, which is not the question. The
Uh,
question is, let me know where you're from originally, where you are now, whatever you feel comfortable talking about your family, maybe something you've never told anybody before, and this is the place you'll want to reveal to it. And it's every once in a while I get a humdinger on that one. And so, but just share a little bit about Ben.
Sounds great. You told me before we started we were going to get into the deepest and the most personal questions, and you started it out as you said with question
Why
one.
not?
But great to be on. My name is Ben Schornack. I am an Iowan to begin with. I was born and grew up in the state of Iowa, and that really shaped the way that I saw the world, but also shaped my interest in seeing the world beyond Iowa. A very homogenous place, and I went to college there, but I studied abroad in Bangor, Wales, and traveled all across Europe and around the rest of the world, and it really opened my eyes to how much bigger the world was than where I grew up. And so, you think about the old saying of you want to develop both roots and wings. Iowa was my roots. And then since then, I've had the opportunity to develop wings through that experience studying abroad and then eventually moving to New York City. And now am rooted in Chicago. But I think
You've
who I
had,
am
you've
as
had, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, you've had some good experience with winter.
I have had a lot of experience with different types of winter. The cold, dry winters of the Midwest, the damp winters where you don't have a car in New York City. I am an expert in winters, but nothing maybe quite like you in Canada.
Well, I know Chicago and Iowa, it's gonna be but you also have the Field of Dreams.
We do have the Field of Dreams. And I will say across all of those areas, as I lead myself to the work, sport has very much shaped my life in Iowa, my life as I moved to New York, my life even when I was in Wales and joined the American football team, pretty much the only one in that area of the world. And then to today in Chicago.
No, that's great. Tell me a little bit about your family. Married, kids, you got siblings.
All of the above. I'm married to my college sweetheart. We moved to New York, took it on together. Um, I am the son of two therapists, which means I could tell you a lot of stories about what it was like to be a 13-year-old with two mental health counselors as parents. But I'm very thankful for the way that it shaped me now that I'm an adult. And I have a younger brother who hopefully is equally thankful for the way that growing up with two therapists and me as an older brother shaped him. He lives in the Twin Cities and is also working in the nonprofit world doing great work.
Twin Cities, yeah, I lived in Winnipeg for a while, so I got down to Twin Cities a
Uh-huh.
lot, or Minnesota, if you will.
Uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah, more winter experience.
Big time winter experience. Um, I'd like to know, yeah, how did that shape you? I was married to a psychotherapist for many years, but I
Uh-huh.
don't know, how was it like to have two mental therapists? Is there a lot of listening or conversation or what?
The story I go to first that I like to tell is when my parents were therapists, but also fairly strict. And when I was um, 11, 12 years old, there was a PG-13 movie at the theater. I wanted to go to it. All my friends were going to it. And to that point, my parents, at least at home, had been very much, if it's PG-13, you're not 13, you don't watch it. It's R-rated, you're not 18, you don't watch it. And so all my friends were going to this theater. I went to my parents and I said, hey, all my friends are going to this movie. It's PG-13. I'm assuming I can't go. Um, just making sure. And they said, well, actually, Ben, like you're becoming an adult and you need to start making your own decisions about things like this. And so what you ought to do is go to these couple of websites, do a bit of research on the movie, come back to us, and as long as you can explain the decision that you've made for yourself, we're going to stand behind you in it. And of
Wow.
course, me as a 11, 12-year old, I'm like, just tell me no or tell me yes. Like, so tell me no so that I can tell my friends that my parents said, you know. Um, but I think about that a lot now, and that was how they parented through my life. And as I, continued to grow into adulthood, it transitioned from we're setting the standards for you as your parents to we're giving you the framework to think about things and make your own decisions. And that when you make a decision, you take agency in it, you stand by it. And I think that's continued to be a theme as I have grown up.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's brilliant. It's kind of like a friend of mine in Bhutan tells us this joke about the best way to get an answer that you want is if you want to go somewhere on as a kid on Tuesday, you ask your parents if you can go there on Wednesday, and
Uh-huh.
they say no, but maybe Tuesday or something like that. So did you go to the movie?
I went to the movie. It was it was good. It was worth it. It was yeah, it was fun and a good learning moment where I could go back afterwards and say thanks for I think I actually said this. I think I said thanks for letting me think it through and make a decision.
Oh, very cool. And did you have to present your research?
I did not present my research. I presented my reasoning.
Um, no, it is brilliant. Probably more of what we need, the critical thinking these days,
Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah.
and taking on responsibility in the sense of not those. It doesn't only affect you a lot of times; it affects other people. The decision too. So
Mhm.
got some good therapists there. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was great most of the time. And sometimes it was, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Will you just ground me so that I can go to my room in silence?
Yeah, or you get to why? Because I said so type of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
there was those times too. I find most of the time, and I've coached like you, I've coached a lot of kids in sports. Most of the time, especially if the kids aren't with the other kids, the mob type of thing, you kind of want that love and structure and everything big time. But if you're with a whole bunch of kids and you want to be cool, it's like, oh, come on, mom, I should go and da, 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 and all that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so it's super cool.
And
How
I should,
well, tell us about you have one. Um,
that's what I was gonna say. I should layer in that now I'm learning all that on the other side. I have one kid, a 10-month-old daughter, Sophia.
right.
And so that has been a whole learning journey in and of itself.
Can't wait till they ask to go to the movie.
I've not yet decided whether I will apply the same strategy that my parents did or not.
Yeah, it's a lot of similarities, but a different world, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
when they
They
get
won't ask, they'll just have it at their, on their phone.
Yeah, they got everything. Way too much now. In fact, not to get too off track, I saw in Europe and UK today or something they were talking about doing um putting in rules again, laws again about between midnight and 6 a.m. No teenager or kid could be on at all.
Mm.
They were going to the under 16 like Australia did, and you couldn't be on.
Yep.
But then I can't remember the age group. It might have even been under 18. Couldn't from midnight to 6 can't be on social media at all. And it's going to be interesting to see how that's enforced. But
Yeah.
um, but I think it's kind of a good mindset or caring that they're doing
Yeah.
by doing that.
Yeah. It's encouraging to see more and more with all of the data that we have, uh, states, cities taking action and kind of setting standards for how social media will be used. We've done a lot of that in the state of Illinois where I'm at now. And it's always I'm always thrilled to see a bill that comes out and does that.
Yeah, it's there's a video, I don't know if you've seen it, otherwise I'll send it to you. It's about kids, and it might be AI, but as long as it's not a politician telling me lies on AI, if it makes me feel good and it's AI, I'm good. But it's about kids talking about the black thing that other kids are using in the
Yep.
future. And it's stuff like, a girl says before she eats, she says, and they all seem to have to want to take a picture before of what they're eating before they eat and see what other people think about it. And they
Mhm.
and they have this thing where it tells them how to go, where to go with like what I use maps for. and they still get
Yeah.
lost, he says. And
Yeah.
all this type of stuff like that. If you haven't seen it, I'll send it to you. It's really, really cool. One of the things I love is the kids sitting in the grass and talking about how these kids are always connected and they're on this thing all the time and this and that and the other. And then he lies in the grass looking at the sky and says, "Wow, they must be exhausted." And he's just doing what we have all done as a kid, lie in the grass
Right.
and look at the sky
Right.
and
Right.
just be.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I find it in myself, even as an adult, it is harder and harder for me to take the headphones out, not always need to be reading something, listening to something, learning new info, sometimes you just need to be.
exactly. There could be a song like that, right?
Yeah, there might be. You gonna sing it?
You don't want that, but as in a whole chorus of people singing "Let It Be" was a great song. So, um, um, growing up or whatnot, were you into sports? Were you did you have the lemonade stand entrepreneur thing going on? Were you playing Lego? What were you doing?
Um, I was into sports, but not, I'll say it this way, maybe like not in the same way as some of my peers or what I see in kids in the way they're into sports today. Meaning I lived for sports because of the community it created and because of what I learned through it, not because I thought that it was going to be the thing that I needed to be driven towards and was going to be the centerpiece of my whole life, right? And so sport was definitely a through line through my childhood. I played every sport imaginable, played four sports in high school, played sports in college. Like I mentioned, even when I studied abroad for a semester in Wales, I joined the American football team and the American basketball team. And and so yeah, I played sport, but I would say I never let sport become my identity in a way that pulled me away from the other things that I was interested in. So I was also I was in show choir, I was part of the chorus, I was in band for a period of time, I was in theater. I wanted to be involved in a lot of different things, and not be the person that got told when they were a freshman, if you don't specialize in basketball, you're never going to play, and then only took that route, right?
No, it's a good lesson. I think for everybody. First of all, to try different sports because you don't know which one's you're going to like more or whatnot. And even I remember my kids had a teacher in high school that played baseball and also had some psychology background and dancing background. And the kids that hated geometry, he compared it to dancing, and the kids that
Hmm.
hated dancing, he compared it to geometry.
Uh-huh.
As an interesting, weird, but effective way of getting them to be interested in
Right.
it. Um,
Right.
I love that type of creativity and everything to do that. And I love the fact that you talk about not being defined as one thing. It's we talk about this a lot, even for the sports initiative that we're involved in, the sports science about if an athlete finds themselves, especially a pro athlete, defined only as an athlete, and at age 35 or older, if they're lucky,
Mhm.
they're not in it anymore, and they got to get out of that. Their only identity is as an athlete. It's hard mental health wise.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And sometimes it's because they themselves have only found their identity in that. But I would say what I see even more often is it is the non-athletes putting the athlete into that box and only coming to them with questions about their athletics and only coming to them with, that narrow view of who they are and what they have to offer. And often when you zoom out, and this has been my experience in my own relationships, when you zoom out, they are often brilliant in many things and excellent in many things because the same things that made them an excellent athlete make them an excellent physicist, make them an excellent language expert, make them excellent in their relationships, make them excellent at sales, right? And so it's something I've enjoyed and would say, yes, sometimes it is that they have not defined themselves. And even more often, it's that um, non-professional athletes define them before they can define themselves.
Yeah, I've told people for years if you want to have an athlete actually spend more time with you, ask them about
Mhm.
anything but what they're doing
Yeah, exactly.
because they'll light up because you did ask them about something else.
Right,
Not rocket science, but it's true because
right.
obviously everybody goes up to them and says, "Wow, I love football. Did you know?" Or whatever type of thing. So yeah, right on the money, and we can get to that a little
Yeah.
more. But why did you go to the schools you went to and study what you did, or what were you thinking about when you were deciding?
So I went to school at a small private liberal arts school in Iowa called Central College. 2,000 people, same size as my high school, where both my parents went, and the school that I said I would never go to for all of my life. Um,
Never say never, right?
exactly. And look, like I think if I, with all the knowledge I have today, if I were re-choosing where I'd go to school, I wouldn't have chosen that. I would have gone somewhere with more diversity, with more population in general, with more things to do. Um, but at the time, it was the right place for me because I had grown up with such a focus on um, relationships, even back to my roots of having two counselor parents and talking through everything. And I couldn't imagine sitting in a classroom with a professor who didn't know me beyond a name, or that I didn't know them beyond a name. And so I really focused in on schools that were not too far, not too close from home, and schools where I felt that I could build very deep relationships with the other students if I was going to participate in sports with the other athletes, and even with the faculty and the staff at the school. And so, you know, there were good things and bad things about going to that school, but I think something I really valued was the depth of relationships that I formed, to where I can still call up the professors that I built relationships with and get advice. And then I think because I knew that I was going to school in a small Dutch town in Iowa, and I knew that I wanted for myself to see more of the world. That's where then I made the decision to study abroad, and to go and just be in a completely different environment and be very intentional while I was in that small town in Wales, which maybe isn't so different from the small town in Iowa. Leverage I mean, it is and it isn't, right?
Right.
Leverage the fact that I could hop on a train to anywhere, hop on a plane to anywhere, and I went to as many cities in different contexts as I could. Moved back, finished out school, moved to New York 2 weeks later because I missed that level of like multicultural big city living.
Yeah, it's like the movie of the guy or the gal that wants to get out of the small town
Uh-huh.
and move out, or that doesn't. That's actually almost very Canadian of you, because most Canadians go to school in their hometown. I don't know what the stats are, but they do. But
Yeah.
then they go international, but they start. Whereas a lot of Americans say, "Oh my God, I got to get out of wherever they are, even if they're in New York
Yeah.
or somewhere else,"
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
deal.
Right.
So
Well, I'm proud. I'll wear that with a with honor. There's
yeah,
some Canadian in me.
I'm sure your parents were somewhat excited or happy that you went to the school that they went to, and
Yeah, they'd have been happy either way, but they were happy.
um, you you seem to in the things you've done, from I mean, you taught, you were a teacher, you were in AmeriCorps Vista. There was I mean, is there anything I'm missing here that you weren't in sports or coaching kids, if you will, or involved with kids like the whole way?
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you a quick story that I think then framed up my experience because I thought that I was going to be I thought I was going to be a counselor too. Of course, the kid who says you're not going to go to the same school, you're not going to be a counselor like your parents, like that's what I thought my path was going to be. Um, Early in high school, so my uncle was a missionary and a pilot in Venezuela, the whole time I was growing up. Then moved to Ecuador once Americans couldn't live in Venezuela. But when I was early in high school, my brother and I and my parents went and visited him. And uh, on the first day, he flew us into the middle of the Amazon rainforest, landed on a small patch of grass, and we were going to stay with it was the Mahawanyan tribe in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, for a few days, to see what his life was like there. And first of all, I had practiced all the Spanish that I could practice in preparation for this trip because I wanted to connect with the people that I was, going to be with. Of course, within 2 seconds, I learned that the Mahawanyan tribe in the middle of the Amazon rainforest does not speak Spanish. They have their own tribal language, and so you all, you sit there, you look at each other, and it's kind of awkward, and then all of a sudden, one person rolls out a soccer ball, and everything changes, right? And for like the full 3 or 4 days that we were there, we just played soccer the whole time. Like, and I learned, I like reflect on it now. Maybe I didn't understand it at the time, but I think I learned so much about what sport was. Sport was connection before I understood them. Sport was um, uh, like shared reality before language. It was all these incredible things. It was therapeutic, right? It was all these things, and I think as I moved to New York, thought I was going to maybe go to grad school, be a counselor, had all these other ideas for myself. I just found myself being called back time and time again to sport. And I was like, well, why don't I just coach for a little bit until I figure out, I mean, probably how I framed it at the time, until I figured out what my like career was going to be, right? Um, and so I did. I coached basketball. I coached a basketball team in the South Bronx in New York and another basketball team on Wall Street. Very different teams, very different issues that the kids faced. Both had issues and needed sport to help support them. And then I was also a PE teacher at a school for young people with physical and mental disabilities on the Lower East Side.
Hmm.
Um, and those experiences just like it was maybe a year or two in when I was still kind of fighting it, being like, I'm going to go to grad school and be a counselor. All of a sudden, one day I was just like, I'm doing that work through this, right? Like I'm watching young people with physical disabilities experience agency in a way that they don't experience the entire rest of the day. I'm
Yeah.
watching young people who have, again, different experiences on Wall Street in the South Bronx, but shared experience in some ways, like a lack of connection to parents, either because they're off working or dad's not at home or whatever it is. Like I'm watching them, I guess, heal from what they've experienced. In real time through physical activity. And I just decided I'm going to like double down on this work. And so, long-winded way of answering your question, but yeah, served youth directly, then started training coaches and how to integrate positive youth development into their coaching methods. And then for the last 10 years now, have been on the funding side, trying to drive resources and really raise awareness that sport is not fun and games. It is actually a crucial way that young people in communities deal with their surroundings and that we need to treat it as such.
Yeah, that's beautifully said and really you're talking my love language, I guess is what whatever. Um,
I
because
never coached hockey, so maybe not all the way, but
yeah, well, the love ends when you get on the ice and then it starts again
yeah.
after the ice. But there's so much truth to what you say there about just sports' connection. One of my favorite, it kind of relates. This one of my favorite quotes. I think probably my favorite quote of all is Maya Angelou, who said, you probably know, most people forget what you said, forget what you've done, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And
Hmm.
that hit me early on, and I've been using it forever, even in anything, business, sports,
Yeah.
whatever. If you don't make them feel the rest of it doesn't happen. And there's different ways to make them feel. If you can't do it by language, you take out the soccer ball, like you said.
Right.
And all of a
Right.
sudden it's a whole different ball game, pun intended, I
Yeah.
guess. And
Right. Right.
and and you got and there's a connection. There's a connection
Yeah.
that's like really, really deep. And I think the part I love the most and the thing I miss the most, so I got three boys and a bonus
Hmm.
daughter. I call her, married to my middle son, because in Denmark they use the word bonus, not in-law or step, which I think is also cool.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
but it was just coaching them and watching them and being at practices at whatever time in the morning. Missed that ferociously as the thing I missed the most about um, everything that happens there. And one I just spoke to this when I was in Bhutan. I mentioned this. There was one time my youngest son was 10, playing in the summer league of hockey or whatever, and I heard the coach yelling at the players, "Well, do you guys want to win or have fun? Which one?" And I went up to him after I couldn't resist, because being a coach a lot, I try
Uh-huh.
not to be a parent coach
Uh-huh.
at the same time, but I told him that in my opinion, he's missing an opportunity to be a great coach, number one,
Yeah.
and be a better person himself. But number two, and to make a long story short, how do you expect them to, is you really think that's the right thing to offer them to choose
Right.
rather than something, if you want to have both of those on the table, you're going to have the most fun if you try your best to win. And then if
Right.
you win, great. And if you don't, that's another scenario.
Yeah,
And
totally. To see
actually,
them as competitors instead of, connected,
yeah,
things is a
and
very interesting thing.
if you're saying you win or have fun,
Right.
you're not having fun at all during the whole journey of it and playing and
Right.
everything. Yeah, even to the point of pros, and I've known a fair amount of pros, when it gets to the game after psyching themselves and everything else, they have to calm themselves down to play. And a lot of times pro coaches will say, just have fun out there. They want them to be
Right.
in that mode of having fun because they'll play their absolute best when they're doing
Right.
that.
Right.
So I get what you're saying. I loved because and I love the fact that when you're coaching, it's way more than coaching the sport. You're coaching everything.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
a great responsibility, but it's, I mean, more fulfilling than
Yeah.
anything else. So good for you. Um, were there any experiences, other experiences you can share that were inflection points, were really impactful from maybe personal standpoint, or what happened to the kid, or whatever?
Um, Man, I feel like there have been so many.
I know.
And I can, even as we're having this experience, when you said that quote, what was going through my head was, it's how you make people feel. And that I hope is something that I hope that the young people that I coached felt that, but I know that I, as the coach, I was thinking through moments where like how I felt from the way that a kid succeeded that I was working with, or a kid responded to me, or a kid shared something with me that he hadn't shared with other people,
Right.
that I could help them through. And like, I think that's part of why and I'm not a coach today, but part of what just attracted me to stay involved and engaged in this work, is the way that I felt through those experiences. And yeah, I mean, I think when I was an American, just inflection points, when I was an AmeriCorps member, um, I was I was supposed to be a volunteer coordinator, and by a weekend I was running all their sports programming because why not, right? And I remember one kid who, his name was Paul, and he was having a particularly difficult time, and the teachers kept putting him in timeout, keeping him out of class, and keeping him out of sports programming. Right? It's the very first thing that maybe we're getting a little bit better at this, but the very first thing is like if you're not making grades, you're out of sports programming. If you're misbehaving, this kid was maybe in second grade. If you're misbehaving, you can't go outside. This is a kid who's hyperactive, has a lot of challenges at home, and you're taking away this thing, which I think just tells you something about how society views sport, right? Sport is recreational, it is extracurricular, it is to be earned, it is the hook, that you can use to entice people to do the things that they actually ought to be doing. And I think I was I don't know, maybe 19 at the time. And I went up to the 50-year-old person who ran the program and was just like, hey, I'm telling you, Paul's going to be better in your classroom if you let me take him outside and play sports with them an hour a day. And
Hmm.
sure enough, he did. We were able to form a bond. He formed better bonds with his classmates. He would come back in. He will have like gotten the physiological or biological response of just like moving your body, right? And the way that that can calm everything down. And I guess that was another point where, um, first I learned a lot about myself because I was working in a neighborhood and context that even though I grew up 15 minutes from it was totally different from my own experience. And then second, I just learned a lot about how the world viewed sport for kids and
Hmm.
wanted to try to change that.
Yeah, it's yeah, I kind of love what you're saying, where that used as a tool, the wrong way, whereas it should be used the right way. And
Yeah.
especially in because young kids want to be active, and they know. I mean, it's proven time and time again that they will they will be more creative, think better if they're eating right and
Mhm.
they're active. Um,
Exactly.
it's not rocket science actually.
Right.
It's real stuff, um and I remember actually being the 19-year-old telling an older person stuff too, and it makes me think nowadays. I mean, intelligence isn't by age. It's usually by
Right,
experiences
right.
that people have. And an older person should listen to a younger person and vice versa, because there's always something to learn if you're, wise enough to do that. Um,
Totally.
how did your career evolve where now you started with Laureus, you've been with Laureus a while. How did it evolve where you joined Laureus, and then we'll get into what you're doing now with Laureus?
Yeah. I'm maybe it's my Iowa roots, but I'm a loyal person that likes to stay with the organization I'm with. And I think if you look at each stage
That's
of my
crazy.
career,
What are you talking about,
I,
man? Why would you
yeah,
do
I know.
that?
I you know, when I was coaching, it was so hard for me to leave coaching. And the person that was trying to recruit me over to this coach training organization was trying to do it for, you know, 6 months, calling me every week. This person actually was coached one of the middle school teams with me, and we'd go out after a game, and he'd be like, "You gotta come do," and I just was always like, "No, I want to build and grow here. I want to be consistent. I want to be loyal, right?" And I think eventually I did make the decision to go and work for this coach training organization, and then it was the same thing there, where at that organization. Laureus was a large funder of theirs, and I got to know the Laureus team very well. Within that coach training organization, I grew into a few different roles. I was leading all of our work in fundraising across all of the Northeast, so New York, Boston, Connecticut um, was primarily where we were. And again, through that and the general approach I try to take to fundraising is like I'm trying to build an authentic relationship. And so I got to know the Laureus team very well. And some people, like Adam, or my colleague Rochelle, um, you know, I was seeing them once every few weeks for 2 years, while I was in this fundraising position with the organization because I liked them as humans and wanted to build authentic relationships. I never thought I was going to leave coaching. Once I started and really got into it, like I said earlier, oh shit, we might have to start over because I am referencing something I just said in a question that's going to be edited out.
No, just we'll fix it up. Don't worry about
Okay,
it. Yeah.
okay. Um, uh, yeah, I never thought that I was going to leave coaching. I am a loyal person. I think it's part of my Iowa roots. I'm used to people taking jobs and staying in them for a very long time. And so, once I fell into coaching and really loved it, I thought I was going to be doing that for a long time. But I eventually, over a long period of time, was persuaded by another coach that I worked with to move over to this organization that was training coaches. And I started to think more about the systems, and I was watching how other coaches interacted with their kids and thinking about what if we can change coaching as a whole, instead of just me, only working with individual kids, and maybe I can do a bit of both. So that led me to move to an organization called Coach Across America, which hired and trained people as AmeriCorps members and coaches. And so it kind of tied some of my previous experience together. And uh, I evolved within that role and eventually started fundraising for that organization and became the director of all their New York City programming, as well as Boston and Connecticut, kind of all the Northeast. And as part of that fundraising process, I think the way I still approach fundraising today, I developed a very close relationship with one of our core funders, Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. And through that relationship, I got to know the individuals that were part of that team. I got to know Adam Fraser, who who's now on our board. I got to know Rochelle Patel, who is still a colleague of mine today. Um, and over a period of time, we built friendships and authentic relationships. And when they were getting ready to really expand their work in New York City, they talked to me maybe a year out from even posting the job about this job that might be opening up. And again, I was in my loyalist roots saying, no, it's not for me. I'm going to stay put. I'm not going anywhere. But over time, I kind of zoomed out again and thought about, well, I can keep focusing on coach training, but now I can also get into addressing the infrastructure of youth sports in this country, to think about funding, to think about systems change, advocacy. And it ended up just being too unique of an opportunity to pass up. And so I took that job in November of 2017, starting in New York, and have been in it ever since, in different roles within Laureus.
Yeah, it's not too bad when it's an iconic organization that kind of wants you to join them,
Yeah,
and it's true. I mean, Nelson Mandela founded, and the history. I mean, there's a lot to be said for being in an organization that has that background. Um, and I can imagine because I got offered my dream job from a pro hockey team at one point,
hmm
and ended up, but the guy that offered me that job told me to take another job based on what I did for them. And
uh-huh.
but it's always interesting getting out maybe of what you loved, like the coaching, into another aspect, and
Yeah,
loving still, but in a different scenario. Because I miss coaching, and I'm sure you probably do too.
I do, and I think each time that I am doing something that is more rooted in the systems of youth sport, it is pulling me further and further away from how the work is actually happening on the ground. And it's something that I found myself needing to be very intentional about. And so, like I said at the start, I have a 10-month-old daughter. I would like to get back into coaching and start to like make sure that as I'm thinking about these systems, I'm not too far disconnected from the reality of how it happens and the way that I understood it when I was, going to work as a coach every day those, 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah, well, you know, I got psyched about Laureus. I've known Laureus for a while, and then be able to meet Adam and then get involved with you guys and talk about what you're doing now as heading up the
Mhm.
U.S. and congrats on getting that opportunity and you deserve it. We've gotten to know you a little bit and I mean they obviously didn't hire you just for your good looks, as one friend of mine said. It must have been something else too. And but talk about that and talk about why I know why we're excited about it, why you are excited about working with our us at Tower Capital for this whole generational sports science initiative and
Mhm.
how you see that all developing and why you're excited about it.
Yeah. So I'll start actually just high level what Laureus even is because
Please.
um, many people around the world do know Laureus, and it is an iconic brand in Europe and some other parts of the world. But in the United States, it's we're still growing our brand identity.
Yeah.
Um, but Laureus globally was founded 25 years ago under the patronage of President Mandela. Many people have seen the movie Invictus or know the story of the way that President Mandela leveraged the sport of rugby to to unite his country of South Africa post-apartheid. And there was a gentleman by the name of Johann Rupert who runs a company called Richemont,
Hmm.
which is the parent company of Cartier Chloé Montblanc, who wanted to kind of capture the excellence that he saw through that unification in his country of South Africa and created the first ever Laureus World Sports Awards. And that Laureus World Sports Awards show 2001 was in Monaco, and it brought together the greatest sporting athletes of that time to recognize that greatness and recognize the power of sport more broadly. And look, I wasn't there at that time, but as I understand it, the intention was just for it to be an award show at the time. And then President Mandela gave this now famous speech about sport having the power to change the world and unite people in ways that nothing else can, and speak to young people in the language that they understand. And I like to imagine that the athletes who were sitting in the audience probably thought to themselves, well, we have to do more than this. This is about more than the awards that we've earned and about more than the camaraderie that we've built with one another. How are we going to activate on that? And the athletes and President Mandela sat down and talked about that, and that became the founding story of the Laureus Foundation. So fast forward 25 years, Laureus is a global organization with with a headquarters in London and then 9 individual country offices. We make grants and raise awareness for the power of sport as a tool to end violence, discrimination, and disadvantage all around the world in more than 40 countries. So the role that I play is leading the U.S. Foundation. I've been serving as the executive director of the U.S. Foundation for the last 5 months, but I've been in leadership in the organization, including some interim leadership during transitions for the past few years now. And I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing. And I think it's important to note the way that sport is leveraged is so different based on the context of the individual country, is different based on the context of the individual state, all the way down to the city and neighborhood. And so I think
Right.
the structure that we built allows us to leverage sport on a global, national, and hyper local level, which is one of the great powers of Laureus. I'll pause. You asked a few different questions. I'll pause there in
I
case you want to dig in.
know. No, I appreciate you doing that because you have to have a strong foundation to be able to be successful in the first place,
Yeah,
and that's what's happened. And yeah, so now take it to the next step of what you're doing now, and
yeah.
5 months, and they said it wouldn't last. Who thought? I mean, geez.
I'm just
And
proving them wrong every day.
and yeah, why you're excited about what you're doing now and the opportunity and what's happening, what you find happening in the States with respect to
Yeah.
Laureus.
Yeah. So the first role that I took when I was with Laureus was to launch and lead coalitions that we were building in New York and Chicago. And the concept there is part of Laureus's flagship initiative that we call Sport for Good Cities. And really what we are trying to do is rather than make grants, isolated grants across the country, 50,000 here, 10,000 here, 100, we're trying to really concentrate our resources with grants and then come alongside those grants with capacity building support and with a lens towards collective organizing to address the systems that are preventing young people from participating in sport. We know that $50,000 to one organization is not going to make major change for a city. Maybe it will for individual kids, but not at a city level. When you start to layer in hundreds of thousands of dollars, a collective organizing effort, and a strategic plan to build relationships with the mayor's office and park district and local government, then you can start to think about the systems, right?
Right.
So that was my first role, and I really helped to build along with some great local leaders in each of those communities that work up from the ground in each of those cities, following also the learnings that came before me in New Orleans and Atlanta, which are the other two cities that we work in. And In 2019, we had grown both New York and Chicago enough to the point where we could hire full time in each of them. And that was a fork in the road moment for me because I was like, am I going to go lead that Chicago coalition or the New York one? And I actually chose the New York one first. And then in the span of about a week, the people we were renting from in New York decided to sell their condo. My wife wanted to change jobs. There were some family health issues at home, and I was like, you know what? Actually, something's pulling us to Chicago here. And so I took that role, and we hired in New York. And for most of the following 6 or 7 years, was just fully focused on building Chicago. And I think um, when the opportunity came for me to step into this executive director role, it was a hard decision because I had worked extremely closely with local community members. We had grown the Sport for Good Chicago Coalition to serve 140 organizations who collectively serve one out of every four kids in the city of Chicago. So think about the power of that collective voice to say, um, to go into a meeting with the mayor's office or the governor's office or a local funder or a corporation or a pro team and say, hey, we collectively serve one out of every four kids in the city, and we think that this policy needs to change, or we think that this, area needs a little bit more attention. And because of that power we built, we had done incredible things. We raised tens of millions of dollars for this work. We made Illinois the first state to pass a youth sports commission focused on increasing access and equity to sport. We did all these incredible things, and again, because of my loyalist roots, it was hard for me to think about leaving that and taking something
Yeah, of
on.
course.
But I think after a lot of thought, I really believe in what Laureus can do nationally, believe we can replicate some of the learnings from Chicago, believe that we can live even more fully up to the legacy that President Mandela and the athletes that founded this left, and decided it was a challenge and an opportunity that I wanted to take on.
Yeah, it's tough to leave the people you love. You know,
Yeah.
and even with teams, I've adults now that would come back to me that I coached when they were 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever type of thing. And it's so fulfilling when they say, I taught a lot about visualization when I coached, which is way
Mhm.
before VR and AR and all that stuff. And just as a mini example, and they would say, "Yeah, coach, we remember the V word. We remember the V word. Visualize because and but that's just that one example of the close relationships I think you're talking about that where you made an impact and then you kind of moving up to make even a bigger impact, but you miss it.
Yeah, and a piece of it too is like the infrastructure was built to keep going without me. We have a very strong team in Chicago. People who have been part of the team and built the work with me in partnership over the last 3 years. You know, so I was really confident that the Laureus Chicago team could keep leading the work and that the local coalition organizations would be that it wasn't about me leading it. It was about what we had built collectively. And so far that's been true.
Kind of like what a leader who cares is supposed to do, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's true. You build that, you build a business, whatever it is. You build a family, then you let them go too.
Hmm.
That's what a leader does. Um, no, thanks for sharing that and those stories. And I think people can learn a lot from it because it's easy to stay, maybe like athletes sometimes it is too, stay a little too long also,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
which is not good for anybody, type of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
there's that to be said too. Um, what attracted you, not to put you on the spot, what attracted you to partner with Tower and the whole sports science initiative?
Yeah. Earlier in the conversation, I referenced how athletes get put into a box. And that was the first thing that caught my eye as I started to get to know you all and started to learn about this initiative was that you were kind of, really out there with the megaphone saying, we want to design something that creates better science and access and opportunity in sport and capitalizes on all these markets. And we want to do it with pro athletes, but we don't want to do it with pro athletes just to put a couple names next to our fund. We want to do it with athletes because they have expertise that nobody else has, but also because the same thing that drives them, that helped make them who they were, are the same types of skills that you want in a room when you're making tough decisions and when you're trying to determine which path you're going to take. And really, like, there were and are so many other alignments or areas of alignment, but that was the thing that caught my eye and said, this is a group that I want to partner with. And I think generally is, as an athlete founded and led organization, is what we look for in partnerships, is groups that are going to leverage the full being and expertise of the people that we work with.
Lived experiences, right? Um,
Yeah.
is what they bring to the table for sure, and not being defined, as you said, as only an athlete,
Mhm.
but way more than
Yeah.
that. Um, one last question, because what we say in LA is keep them wanting more, so we can do a sequel type of deal. Um,
Yep.
Looking back COVID was like 5, 6 years ago. Some people feel it feels like it was still yesterday. Some people think it was
Yeah.
years ago, and all sorts of things happening in the world, and young people. Potentially younger people having maybe the toughest time of any generation for a lot of
Yep.
reasons. With all that said, and raising a young family, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Thanks for asking that. I think it is something that we as a society are probably not spending enough time reflecting on, and then I'll bring that down to micro and say it's something I don't think about as often as I should. Um, I might give a work answer and a personal answer. I think on the work side, I'm so grateful for the national community of people that I get to work with. Like when I first moved to Chicago, I was the only staff member from Laureus here, and I never felt like I was alone in a city because there were so many incredible partners, thought partners, people who have become friends that I've gotten to work with. And I think this area of sport as a tool for youth development is so niche that we have the same people who have been pushing and doing this work, for 15, 20 years. And then we have new people who join into it and bring so much new expertise that we can learn from. And I'm grateful to get to do meaningful work in community with people that I deeply care about. Um, and like I'm giving that as a work answer, but it's more than that. It's a personal answer, and it's like part of how I found my own passion and identity in a way that's really meaningful. And on the personal side, I mean, I'm grateful to be a father. It's a cliche and simple answer, but I can't think of anything else to say. Like, man, how much I've learned about myself, my wife, my own parents, my kid, in the last 10 months. It's learning like I've never experienced before. I read an article um, early in fatherhood about about basically how you're fathering a different kid every day for the first year. And it's really been my experience. Um, and it's like both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time every day with the new experience, and like that adapting to that reality on a daily basis has taught me so much about myself, the world, my friendship, everything. And so, I'm just grateful uh to have that as an experience and to keep learning through
I get it. Believe me, I get it. What are you most hopeful
it.
for?
Um, I'm hopeful, I guess back to what I talked about with like convening and community, like I'm hopeful that after a lot of isolation, like you just talked about in COVID and kind of forced isolation, sitting on top of American individualism, like sitting on top of like all these different things that are pushing us apart. I'm seeing sparks of community that makes me hopeful that we can build on those sparks and make a real flame of more places where people are in person or with one another or building together around shared interests or goals. Like I know that's a broad answer, but I'm just hopeful for reconnection in society that I feel has was tough before COVID, but really was disrupted during COVID in a way that I'm not sure we've quite returned from.
No, it's a good answer and a real answer. I'm probably grateful and hopeful for the fact that you are a leader who cares. That's going to um, make a difference and continue to make a difference. And I'm grateful that you're a new friend, which is also good.
Yep.
And I'm really hopeful for the hopefully amazing stuff that we can do together. And in an arena that we both love, which makes it even more interesting. So thanks for being that, and thanks for being on the series, and appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we'll have to go to my first ever professional hockey game together at some point. I've never
Deal.
been. That's how
We
we'll
got a
seal the
deal.
friendship.
We'll do that. Chicago, New York, or wherever. We'll figure it out. But
Beautiful.
it's official. We're doing it. Thanks.